This morning we hear the good news, according to Apostle Paul, from the 1 Corinthians chapter 13, picking up immediately from where our second lesson left off. Glory to you, O Lord. If I speak in the tongues of mortals and of angels, but I do not have love, I'm a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to move mountains, but I do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions and I hand over my body so that I may boast, but I have not love, I gain nothing. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. Love is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Love never ends. As for prophecies, they will come to an end. As for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. But when I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror with obscurity, but then we will see face to face. I know now only in part, but then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love abide, these three, and the greatest of these is love. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Okay, so I got a quick question for you all. And you can just blurt out the answer out loud so that everybody can hear. Right? That text, 1 Corinthians 13 that I read, where is that most commonly heard?
Weddings.
Right, weddings. Except for, I don't see any bride. I don't see any cute little flower girl walking down the aisle throwing petals, and Bob's not playing Canon and D or Jesu, Joy of Man's Desiring. And please, Bob, do not play those later in the service. This isn't a wedding, but yet there's that text. Well, I'm actually going to say something that maybe for some people might be a little mind-blowing, for others maybe not. But that text, that oftentimes called the love chapter, it's not about weddings. It's not about marriage. It's not about, yes, it's a wonderful chapter about love, but it's not about specifically the love between two people when they come together to get married. Apostle Paul is writing this letter to the 1 Corinthians, a Christian community that he started. And the Corinthians, this Christian community, they're having issues. They've got lots of things that are going on. They are very much divided, and there's a lot of infighting about the right theology, the ways to think about God, the ways to think about Jesus, and they're also fighting amongst one another about who's most important. And Paul is writing them to try and to bridge some of those divisions and to reunite them together as a community of faith. And Paul is using this metaphor of the body of Christ that we heard in chapter 12. We heard a good portion of that in our second reading for today. Paul is saying, just as the body has many members, and though all the members, though they are many, are one body, so it is with Christ. That is, so it is with the Christian community, the community of faith. Each and every single one of us has differences. Each and every one of you has a different set of spiritual gifts, something that makes you unique, something that makes you you. But those differences are important. Not only are they important, but they're necessary. Because if the whole body was an eye, where would the hearing be? And if all the body was hearing, where would the sense of smell be? You, as you are, as unique as you are needed. And not just simply to come here and to occupy a pew and to throw some money in the offering plate, but the unique way that you can live your faith out loud is needed so that we can be together a whole community of faith. And this is also true of people who aren't here. There are people who aren't here that we need here. And yes, of course, while it would be good for us to have some more white, middle class, upper middle class Americans, there are quite a few of us here there that fit that particular description. And so not only do we need them, but we need people who are different from us. We need people who are different in ethnicity and background. We need people who are different in ways of thinking, both politically and religiously. We need people who are different in orientation and in identity. We need people who are different in social status. We need the people who are addicted to drugs and need people to love them through their recovery. And we need the people who are in poverty or the people who are homeless. We need these people not just so that we can say, hey, we're such a great church, would you look at that? We can fill the pews and we've got enough money to support our building and our programs. And we don't need them just so that we can pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, would you look at us? We're doing some wonderful ministry. But we need these people who are different than us so that we can better be the body of Christ in the world. The differences are important. And there is also not a single person, whether they're here or whether they're not here, that we can say, oh, you're insignificant, we don't need you. The head cannot say to the foot, I have no need of you. And actually, God has intentionally created these differences among us. He has intentionally put us together, brought us together, even despite our differences, to make us one in the body of Christ, so that all members can be treated and cared for equally. We need people who are different from us, so that we can better be the body of Christ in the world, so that when people experience us together as a community of faith, whether it's here in this building or outside of this building, whether it's all of us together or just some of us as a small group or some of us individually, when they experience us as a community of faith, they say, you know, there are people who embody the love of God. There's that word, love. That is our identity. That is our purpose. It's why we exist. To embody the love of God in the world. That's where Paul is going with this body of Christ metaphor into the love chapter. Love. We are to embody the love of God. Everything that we say and that we do is to be out of love. Now, unfortunately, our society has done a couple of disservices to the word love. First and foremost, that it's tossed around kind of like brain candy. I love this, I love that, this was so lovely. Or I would really love it if the Patriots didn't win the Super Bowl again. Or it's even in the McDonald's commercial, I'm loving it, right? We use it all the time. And we use it so frequently that in some ways, it's lessened the meaning and the depth of the word. The other disservice that we've done to the word love is to hypersexualize it. And that every time somebody says, I love you to somebody else, we automatically assume some sort of sexual connotation is involved. But that's not how Paul is using that word here. Paul is not talking about love and throwing it around like it's candy, and he's not talking about sex. He's not talking about even the love that one person has for another when they enter into the covenant of marriage. There are 4 words in the Greek language, the language in which the New Testament was written for love, And the one that Paul is using is agape. Agape is profound love. It's unconditional love. Agape is love that is given without expectation of receiving anything in return. It's self-giving love. And oftentimes, it's love that's costly for the person who's giving it. And Paul says about this love, that we are to, as the body of Christ, embody this love that is patient, that agape is patient, agape is kind. Agape is not envious or jealous or rude. Agape does not insist on its own way. Agape does not seek for its own sake. Agape never ends. This is the love out of which we are to speak and to act every day of our lives. Paul says that, if you have such faith that you can navigate all the hardships and struggles of your life as if they're not even there. If you have that kind of faith but you don't have love, it's worth nothing. And Paul says that if you know everything about everything, if you are all-knowing, which is a bold statement because that being all-knowing is an attribute that we commonly ascribe to God. And so Paul is saying, you know what, if you know so much that you can be compared to God, but you don't have love, it's worth nothing. And Paul says that if you're the best person in the world, constantly giving of yourself and your time and your resources, but you're not doing it out of love, then it's worth nothing. Everything that we say, everything that we do, is to be out of this agape love. But how do we do that? We have to be shown what this agape love is, how to do it. We have to be shown how to do it. We have to have an example of some kind. We have to have an experience of agape love in order to be able to act and speak out of it. While I invite you to think about the people in your life who have shown you agape-like love, I know for certain that all of us together share one certain example, that we all have one experience, at least, in common together of agape. Jesus. God, and seeing the world the way that it is with all of its brokenness and the anger and the hatred and the division and the discrimination and the evil and the things that tear the world apart, the selfishness of the world, God could very easily have said, you know what, I'm done with that, and walked away. But instead, God decided not to abandon the world to evil. God decided not to abandon the world to brokenness and to suffering and to pain and loneliness and isolation and division. And instead, God decided to love the world with agape love. God entered into the evil. God entered into the suffering and the pain, the loneliness, the isolation, the discrimination. God entered into the tears, the hurt in Jesus Christ. And Jesus, out of agape for the world, died on the cross. And 3 days later, rose again to new life, defeating evil, breaking the bonds of sin and death. Suffering, pain, grief, loneliness, isolation, hatred, violence, they hold nothing to the power of God's love poured out for the world in the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And this love, this agape, is for you. This love is for you. This agape, this love, is love that mends your brokenness. This is love that heals your pain. This is love that sustains you through hardship. This is love that forgives all your sin. This is love that carries you through your time of doubt. This is love that doesn't keep track of your mistakes. This is love that holds you and never lets you go. And this is love that is limitless. There is nothing that can get in the way of God's agape for you. And this love is given to you without any expectation of receiving anything in return. God doesn't have some sort of condition for you to meet, or some sort of level of success for you to attain, or some sort of test for you to pass in order to gain God's agape. God gives it to you freely. It is a gift. It is a gift. This agape is for you, and it is this love that we are to speak out of, that we are to act out of, that we are to embody together as a community of faith. This is the love with which we are to encounter every single person that we meet, because God offers them agape the same way that God offers it to you. This is the love out of which we become instruments of God's peace in the world, pushing back against the violence and the hatred and the discrimination. This is the love out of which we become instruments of God's peace and God's love, bringing hope to the places and the people that are in despair. And it is out of this love that we are to reach out to those who are different from us, and to love them without any expectation that we are going to receive anything in return. And not just when we feel like it, or when the time is right for us, or when we want to do it, or when it's convenient for us, but all the time. We are to embody this agape, not because it's something that we have to do, not because it's something that we do in order to attain God's love, but because we cannot hold this gift. It is too big for us to hold. God's agape is too much for us to contain it and keep it to ourselves. We cannot keep it to ourselves. It must flow out of us as much as it is poured into us. This love, this agape, given to us in Jesus Christ. This is what we together are to embody as a community of faith. Love that is patient, love that is kind, love that is not envious or jealous or rude, love that does not insist on its own way, love that doesn't seek for its own sake, love that bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. The love of God given in Jesus Christ, the agape poured out in the death and resurrection of Christ for the world, is yours. It is for you. It is a gift. May the agape of Jesus Christ direct your days and your deeds, and may it guide us as together we embody God's loving